How exactly did Hitler and the Nazis come to power? The Wall Street Stock Exchange crashed in October 1929 and triggered the beginning of world depression. Hitler was able to exploit this situation. Throughout the USA, banks were calling in their loans to try and limit their debts. All over the world, businesses went bust. Millions lost their jobs. Germany depended heavily on US money under the Dawes Plan and was particularly hard hit. Unemployment in Germany rose from 1.5 to 6 million between 1929 and 1932. Vast numbers of people were faced with poverty, hunger and disease. These were desperate times that called for decisive government. But successive Weimar governments were weak and unstable. Partly this was because of the Weimar Republic's constitution. Representatives were elected to the Reichstag by proportional representation. This meant political parties got a share of seats which reflected the share of the votes they'd received in an election. The result was lots of small parties in the Reichstag, none with the overall majority needed to form a government. The Socialists were usually the largest party. Their solution to the Depression was to spend public money to kickstart the economy again. But without the support of the other parties, they lost power. Government was left in the hands of shifting coalitions, seldom able to agree on a policy, while all over Germany there were social problems, crime, and political violence. A Nazi Party member recalled how the German people turned to the extremists.
Swarming with unemployed, now nearly 6 million of them, all over the land, young spirits were rearing up in defiant protest against the wretchedness of a life that their fathers seemed to have spoiled for them. Whether they marched with the Nazis or shouted the battle cry of the communists, they were resolved on change, on a new order.
Part of the appeal of the Nazis was that they seemed to offer unity behind one leader, who promised the decisive action the government couldn't deliver. One man remembered the effect hearing Adolf Hitler speak had on him.
There was only one thing for me, either to win with Adolf Hitler or die for him. He who gets to know Adolf Hitler with a pure and true heart will love him with all his heart. He will love him for Germany.
When people are in trouble, they look for someone to blame. Hitler targeted Versailles, democratic politicians, the Jews and communists. The Nazi Party's paramilitary wings, the SA and the SS, seemed to offer order and discipline at a time when law and order appeared to have broken down. One eyewitness remembers,
"What really engaged me was to feel the posture and expression of the SA. Never in my life have I seen such a sense of trust, so much dedication, so much unity of feeling."
The Nazis seemed to want to help the unemployed and the poor. They promised Arbeit und Brot, work and bread. Their plans for the unemployed were to put them to work, rearming Germany. The Nazis offered to give Germany back its national pride. The communists in Germany were also increasing their support. Their solution to the Depression was a people's revolution, like the one in Russia in 1917. But many Germans feared that the violence of the Russian Revolution would be repeated in Germany. Businessmen and industrialists would have had most to lose from a communist revolution. Many donated large sums to Nazi Party funds because they promised to destroy the communists. The industrial tycoon Fritz Thyssen later wrote,
"I have personally given altogether 1 million marks to the National Socialist Party. I believed that by backing Hitler and his party, I could contribute to the reinstatement of real government and orderly conditions, which would enable all branches of activity, especially business, to function normally again."
The money the Nazis got from men like Thyssen funded a lavish and modern propaganda campaign. and the Nazis were masters of propaganda. Hitler campaigned tirelessly, flying around the country, speaking at several meetings in a day. The Nazis mounted huge, impressive rallies, and their posters were everywhere. This one, Death to Lies, shows the muscular arm of the Nazis grappling with the snake of high finance and with Marxism. Unlike the communists, the Nazis appealed to a broad range of people, but they didn't actually commit to a program of government, so it was hard to pin them down. In 1932, Germany went to the polls. The Nazis became by far the largest party in the Reichstag, but they didn't have enough seats to form a majority. To get to this point, Hitler had exploited Germany's economic and social ills. His next step was to exploit Germany's constitutional weakness. In 1931, when the Reichstag had been unable to form a government, Germany's President Hindenburg had used his emergency powers to take direct control of the country. Hindenburg and his allies were worried that Hitler would try and seize power if he wasn't offered a place in the government. They believed they could control Hitler, so early in 1933 they made Hitler chancellor, put Goering in charge of some German police forces, and gave the Nazis 3 seats on the cabinet. Now he had his hands on power, Hitler was able to use the SA as his own private army. As one bystander remembered it, he smashed opposition with violence and intimidation.
On our way home by trolley, we had seen one of the trucks in which the SA transported people they had taken into protective custody. Suddenly, one of the prisoners, a young man, bleeding from a deep cut on his head, jumped from the truck onto the running board of our trolley. No one said anything, and it was suddenly very still in the car. The conductor acted as though he had noticed nothing. No one prevented the fugitive from getting off at the next stop, where he ducked into a doorway.
Very soon, in February 1933, Hitler called a new election. Goering instructed his police forces to protect Nazi meetings, and the SA was given free rein to beat up opponents and break up their meetings. Then, just before the election, the Reichstag caught fire. It's not known who really caused it, but a young communist was arrested and blamed. In the election that eventually took place, the Nazis won 233 seats out of 560, still not a majority. So Hitler expelled the communists from the Reichstag and joined forces with the Nationalist Party. This gave him 286 seats out of 560. He had a majority and control of Germany at last.